For 50 years they called us harmless, primitive, the quiet ones in the back of the room. While they debated trade routes and power blocks, we listened. While they dismissed our warnings, we watched. And when they plotted to enslave us, we were already prepared. The Observers. The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Senate stretched endlessly above Captain Sarah Chen as she walked through corridors filled with beings that could crush her with a thought. For 50 years, humanity had held the smallest seat in this grand assembly, speaking softly while giants decided the fate of worlds. Sarah carried herself with quiet dignity, her simple blue uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate armor and robes worn by representatives of the major powers. The Senate chamber buzzed with its usual pre-session activity. High Chancellor Vextar of the Vorthak Empire stood near the central podium, his massive 8-foot frame covered in ceremonial battle scars that told the story of a species that had conquered 12 star systems through pure military might. His 4 arms gestured dramatically as he spoke to his subordinates in the growling language that had terrorized countless worlds. The sound reminded Sarah of predators, though she had learned long ago to keep such observations to herself. Across the chamber, Matriarch Zelana of the Zelani Collective glided on her energy platform, her crystalline body refracting light in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. The Zelani had achieved dominance through technology so advanced it seemed like magic to most species. They viewed biological beings with something between curiosity and contempt, seeing flesh as an inefficient design that would eventually be discarded. Near the great viewing windows, Elder Cruxion of the Crux Dominion meditated in his environmental suit, the ancient being's gaseous form barely contained within the protective barriers that kept him stable. The Crux were old beyond measure, having achieved interstellar travel when most species were still discovering fire. They considered themselves the philosophers of the galaxy, and their patience with younger civilizations was both legendary and condescending. Sarah took her assigned seat in the smallest section of the chamber, where Earth's delegation of 8 humans looked almost comically tiny compared to the hundreds of representatives from the major powers. Dr. James Mitchell nodded to her as she sat down, his weathered face showing the calm that came from 30 years of watching injustice unfold in the name of galactic politics. Lieutenant Commander Ana Rodriguez was already reviewing her notes, her sharp mind cataloging every detail that might prove useful in understanding the alien mindset. The session began with routine matters that had become depressingly familiar over the decades. Trade disputes between worlds that humans would never be allowed to visit. Territorial agreements that carved up space like pieces of a pie. Technology sharing agreements that specifically excluded primitive species like humanity. Sarah participated when required, offering Earth's measured responses and carefully worded suggestions that everyone knew would be ignored. When the Zelani demanded increased tribute from the mining colonies of the Outer Rim, Sarah politely suggested a gradual implementation that would allow the workers time to meet the new quotas. When 2 minor species brought a territorial dispute before the Senate, she proposed a compromise that would have given both sides access to the disputed resources. Her suggestions were noted in the official record and promptly dismissed by beings who had more important matters to consider. It was during the 4th hour of the session that the real business began. High Chancellor Vextar rose from his position, his massive form commanding immediate attention from every being in the chamber. His voice carried the authority of someone who had never been denied anything he truly wanted. The Vorthak Empire announces its intention to claim the Sol system, he declared, his words echoing through the chamber's translation systems. The human homeworld contains a population ideally suited for our labor requirements. Our fleets will take possession within 1 standard rotation. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates, though it was more curiosity than concern. Humanity had no allies among the major powers, no technology worth protecting, and no military force that could challenge even a single Vorthak destroyer. The Sol system was home to nearly 12 billion humans, but they were seen as nothing more than a renewable resource by species that thought in terms of galactic conquest. Elder Cruxion opened his ancient consciousness to the discussion. The humans have served adequately as mediators and record keepers, he observed, his translated thoughts carrying the weight of eons. Perhaps some arrangement could be made to preserve their diplomatic functions while allowing the Vorthak to claim the majority of the population. Matriarch Zelana's crystalline form flickered with what might have been amusement. The human nervous system is remarkably adaptable, she noted with scientific detachment. They would serve well as biological components in our processing centers. We could share the resource with the Vorthak. Sarah felt the familiar knot form in her stomach, the same feeling she had experienced countless times over the years as she watched her species be discussed like livestock. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species watched the familiar scene play out. The humans would make their polite objection, the major powers would explain why such objections were meaningless, and the session would move on to other matters. She stood slowly, waiting for the recognition that would allow her to speak. The chamber fell into the kind of amused silence that adults might show when a child announces they want to be an astronaut. "Honored representatives," Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "Humanity respectfully requests that the Senate reconsider this proposal. We have served faithfully as neutral mediators for 50 years. Surely our diplomatic contributions warrant protection under interstellar law." The silence that followed was broken by what could only be described as laughter from the Vorthak delegation. High Chancellor Vextar's entire body shook with mirth, and several of his subordinates joined in with their own rumbling sounds. "The prey speaks of law," Vextar said when his amusement subsided. "Humans, your species has much to learn about the realities of galactic power. The strong take what they require. The weak serve or perish. This is the natural order." "The human request is noted but irrelevant," Matriarch Zel'ana added, her voice carrying the cold precision of a computer analyzing data. "They possess no technology or resources that cannot be more efficiently utilized under proper management. There is no logical reason to negotiate when superior force can achieve the same result." Sarah remained standing, her expression unchanged despite the casual dismissal of her entire species. Around the chamber, delegates from dozens of worlds watched the scene with the detached interest of beings observing an ant colony about to be stepped on. "I understand the Senate's position," Sarah said finally. "Earth formally requests a standard grace period to prepare our population for the transition. We would also like to ensure that our people are treated according to established protocols for conquered populations." More laughter from the Vorthak delegation. The idea that humans thought they could negotiate the terms of their own enslavement seemed to genuinely amuse them. "Your compliance is the only term that matters," Vextar replied. "My fleets will arrive in one rotation. Any resistance will result in the total sterilization of your world instead of the more profitable option of slavery." Sarah nodded and returned to her seat. To observers, it appeared that Earth had once again been politely dismissed after making its predictable plea for mercy. Dr. Mitchell made a note in his official record. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez continued reviewing her research materials. The session moved on to other business. What none of the other delegates noticed was the small device Sarah pressed as she sat down, or the brief signal it transmitted to a communication relay hidden within Earth's diplomatic quarters. The message was simple, consisting of only a few coded words, but its implications would reshape the galaxy forever. "The masquerade is over." Across the chamber, High Chancellor Vextar was already discussing deployment schedules with his subordinates. Confident that the Sol system would soon join the long list of worlds that had learned to serve Vorthak interests. The humans, as always, had been polite about their objections. It was what made them so useful as mediators and so predictable as victims. He had no way of knowing that humanity's politeness was about to undergo a fundamental change. 20,000 light-years away, in a system that didn't appear on any galactic charts, Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance. The ship stretched for over 2 kilometers, its hull absorbing all electromagnetic radiation to remain invisible to conventional sensors. Around him, officers moved with quiet efficiency, their faces showing the calm determination of people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. "Signal received from Captain Chen," Lieutenant Commander Park reported from the communications station. "All stations are confirming receipt and moving to full operational status." Webb nodded, studying the holographic display that showed the positions of human assets throughout the galaxy. For 50 years, humanity had been playing a very different game than anyone realized. While the galaxy saw simple merchants and diplomats, every human outside the Sol system was part of an intelligence and preparation network that spanned thousands of worlds. "Status on the Hermes?" Webb asked. "Captain Torres confirms her crew is ready," Park replied. "They will intercept the Vorthak advance fleet as planned." The UES Hermes looked like any other human cargo hauler from the outside, complete with the scratched hull and outdated equipment that suggested a struggling merchant operation. Captain Maria Torres had spent 15 years building her reputation as a hard-working trader who moved supplies between remote colonies. What the galaxy didn't know was that Torres had graduated top of her class from Earth's hidden naval academy, and her ship's cargo holds contained technology that would revolutionize the understanding of human capabilities. Similar scenes were playing out across human space. On the agricultural world of New Eden, farmer Tom Harrison walked across his fields as he had done every morning for 25 years. His neighbors knew him as a quiet man who grew excellent crops and minded his own business. They didn't know that his barn contained enough weapons to outfit a battalion, or that he had spent decades training with systems that didn't officially exist. Harrison received the coded transmission while tending his livestock. He walked to his equipment shed with the same unhurried pace he used for all his daily chores, pressed his hand against what appeared to be an ordinary control panel, and watched as hidden systems activated throughout his property. Similar signals were being sent across dozens of worlds. The elderly woman who ran a small medical clinic on Kepler Station revealed herself to be an expert in alien biology. The young man who taught school on Proxima Colony activated communication systems that connected him to intelligence networks spanning the galaxy. The retired couple who operated a small repair shop in the neutral zone began preparing equipment that had been disguised as industrial machinery for decades. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in her laboratory on Luna, surrounded by devices that represented 50 years of careful research and development. Her teams had studied every species in the Galactic Senate, mapping their biological weaknesses and technological limitations with the patience of scientists and the focus of strategists. The Vorthak exoskeletons that make them nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons have a critical weakness in their power coupling systems, she reported to Admiral Webb via quantum communication. The Zelani crystalline matrices can be shattered by specific harmonic frequencies. The Crux environmental suits fail catastrophically when exposed to certain chemical compounds. Webb reviewed the reports flowing in from across human space. Teachers were revealing themselves to be intelligence analysts. Mechanics were activating hidden weapon systems. Farmers were preparing technologies that had been buried beneath their fields for decades. The galaxy had spent 50 years watching humans go about their quiet business, never realizing that every human settlement was also a military installation. Every human worker was a trained observer, and every human ship carried capabilities far beyond what their primitive appearance suggested. Commander Jin Watanabe worked from his seemingly modest office on the trade station at Rigel 7, coordinating the largest intelligence operation in galactic history. For 30 years, his teams had been gathering information, cataloging everything from the personal habits of alien leaders to the precise locations of every major military installation in Senate space. "We have real-time tracking on all major fleet movements," he reported to Admiral Webb. "Our assets in alien territories are confirming their positions and preparing for Phase 2. The assets he referred to were humans who had spent years working throughout alien space. They had taken jobs as technicians in Vorthak shipyards, researchers in Zelani laboratories, and maintenance workers in Crux facilities. The galaxy had welcomed these hard-working humans who seemed eager to learn and serve, never suspecting that each one was gathering intelligence and preparing for the day when Earth might need to act. Webb studied the tactical display one final time. Every major alien fleet, base, and industrial center was marked with indicators showing human assets in position. 50 years of careful planning and patient preparation had created a network that spanned the galaxy, hidden beneath the facade of humanity's humble merchant and diplomatic services. "Send the activation signal," he ordered. "Inform all units that we are moving to the demonstration phase." Across the galaxy, the message went out through communication channels that other species had never detected. The words were simple, but their meaning would reshape interstellar politics forever. Humanity is no longer asking nicely. The awakening. The Vorthak First Assault Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system with the confidence of apex predators approaching helpless prey. War Admiral Theklar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Crusher, watching Earth appear on his tactical displays like a blue jewel waiting to be claimed. 47 heavy cruisers and 16 dreadnought-class vessels made up his force, more than enough firepower to reduce any resistance to burning debris within minutes. "Scan for defensive installations," Theklar ordered his weapons officer, though he expected to find nothing more threatening than communication satellites and weather monitoring stations. The humans were known throughout the galaxy as a species that had never developed military technology beyond primitive chemical rockets and basic energy weapons. "No orbital platforms detected," came the reply from his tactical officer. "No military vessels in system. Long-range sensors show only civilian transports and industrial equipment around the outer planets." Theklar felt the satisfaction that came with another easy conquest for the Vorthak Empire. His mandibles clicked with anticipation as he prepared to broadcast the surrender demand that would make the conquest official. Earth's 12 billion inhabitants would learn what it meant to serve superior beings. Then his communications officer spoke with confusion in his voice. War Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from multiple human vessels throughout the system. Multiple vessels? Theklar turned toward the sensor station. Show me. The main screen displayed dozens of small ships moving throughout the Sol system. Most appeared to be cargo haulers and mining vessels, the kind of primitive craft that humans used for their modest interplanetary trade. They looked ancient by galactic standards, their hulls marked with the wear and damage that came from decades of honest work. Standard civilian configuration on all vessels, his tactical officer reported after running detailed scans. No weapons detected, minimal shielding, standard human life signs aboard each ship. Total count is 87 vessels of various sizes. Captain Maria Torres sat in the command chair of the UES Hermes, watching the massive Vorthak fleet take positions throughout the system. Her crew worked quietly at their stations, their faces showing the calm that came from years of preparation for this exact moment. Engineer David Kim monitored the special systems hidden within their cargo holds. Weapons specialist Lisa Park kept watch on targeting computers that didn't appear on any official manifest. Torres opened a communication channel that reached every human vessel in the system. Her voice carried the same polite tone that had marked every human interaction with alien species for 50 years. Vorthak Fleet, this is Captain Torres of the Earth Merchant Marine, she said. I am afraid we cannot permit you to proceed with your intended actions against the human population. The silence that followed lasted exactly 15 seconds. When War Admiral Theklar finally responded, his voice carried the disbelief of someone who had just heard mice threaten a pack of wolves. Human vessels, you will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded, Theklar growled. Any resistance will result in your immediate destruction. Torres looked at her crew. Engineer Kim nodded from his station. Weapons Specialist Park confirmed her systems were ready. Navigator Chen had already calculated optimal positioning for what was about to happen. War Admiral, I really hoped it wouldn't come to this, Torres said with genuine sadness in her voice. Please reconsider your position. This is your final warning. Theklar's laughter echoed through his bridge. 87 primitive human cargo ships were issuing warnings to the most powerful fleet in Vorthak space. The absurdity was so complete that even his usually disciplined crew began rumbling with amusement. Destroy all human vessels, Theklar ordered. Show these primitives what happens to those who dare threaten the Vorthak Empire. 47 ships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cannons and antimatter torpedoes lit up the darkness of space as enough firepower to sterilize a continent focused on the scattered human fleet. The energy discharge was so intense that it briefly outshone the sun itself. Torres watched the incoming destruction with the same calm expression she might use while reviewing shipping schedules. Now would be good, she said to her engineer. Kim pressed a series of controls that activated systems hidden throughout the Hermes cargo holds. The ship's external appearance didn't change, but space around the vessel suddenly filled with an energy field that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about human technology. The Vorthak weapons struck the field and stopped. For a moment that seemed to last forever. The combined firepower of nearly 50 warships hung motionless in space, held by forces that shouldn't have existed. Then the field collapsed inward and exploded outward again, sending every plasma bolt and antimatter torpedo back toward its source with 3 times the original power. 6 Vorthak cruisers vanished in brilliant flashes as their own weapons tore through their hulls like paper. The remaining ships found their weapon systems overloading as reflected energy fed back through their firing circuits. Emergency alarms wailed across the fleet as ship after ship lost power to their primary systems. Impossible, Theklar whispered as his flagship went dark around him. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across his bridge while his crew worked frantically to restore basic functions. The same scene was playing out across all 87 human vessels. Each cargo ship revealed defensive capabilities that turned the galaxy's understanding of human technology on its head. But the real surprise was yet to come. Torres opened the communication channel again. War Admiral, I hope this demonstrates that humanity has learned much during our 50 years of observation, she said. However, defensive measures are only the beginning. The cargo bays of every human ship opened simultaneously, revealing not trade goods or mining equipment, but swarms of sleek fighter craft that moved unlike anything ever seen in galactic warfare. Each fighter was controlled by artificial intelligence that had spent decades studying Vorthak tactics, learning their weaknesses, and preparing for exactly this moment. The fighters moved through the disabled Vorthak fleet like dancers performing a deadly ballet. They used precision that no biological pilot could match, targeting life support systems, navigation controls, and communication arrays with surgical accuracy. Within minutes, the mighty Vorthak First Assault Fleet was drifting helplessly in space. their crews alive but completely unable to fight back. But Earth's demonstration was far from over. Throughout the galaxy, monitoring stations belonging to every major species began detecting impossible readings. In the Zilani home system, crystalline sensor arrays registered massive energy signatures appearing where none had existed moments before. Crux observation platforms recorded gravitational anomalies that suggested the presence of objects far larger than anything in their databases. High Matriarch Zelana stood in her command center on the Zilani homeworld, her crystalline form flickering with patterns that indicated extreme agitation. The holographic displays around her showed tactical readings that made no sense according to everything the Zilani knew about human capabilities. Confirmed contacts throughout our territory, her chief analyst reported, his own crystalline structure resonating with confusion. Ships of unknown configuration are decloaking near our major installations. Energy signatures indicate technology levels that exceed our current understanding. Humans? Zelana asked, though she already knew the answer. All vessels are broadcasting human identification codes, the analyst confirmed. But these are not the primitive cargo ships we have observed for 50 years. These vessels are larger than our heaviest dreadnoughts and appear to incorporate technology we cannot identify. The UES Prometheus materialized in orbit around the Zilani capital world, her massive bulk casting shadows across the planet's crystalline cities. Captain Rebecca Stone stood on the bridge of the 2-kilometer warship, watching Zilani defense fleets scramble to respond to her presence. Zilani Defense Command, this is Captain Stone of the United Earthship Prometheus, she announced over all frequencies. We are not here as conquerors, we are here to deliver a message. Similar scenes were playing out throughout Zilani space. Human vessels that had been invisible to their sensors for decades suddenly revealed themselves, each one demonstrating technology that the crystalline beings had thought impossible for biological species to achieve. In Crux territory, Elder Cruxion floated in his meditation chamber, his gaseous consciousness struggling to process the reports flowing in from across his domain. The ancient being had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, but nothing had prepared him for what he was observing. The humans have been among us for 50 years, his aide reported through the environmental speakers. Our records show human workers, researchers, and traders throughout our space, but they were not what they appeared to be. Commander Jin Watanabe stood in what had appeared to be a modest repair facility in the Crux outer territories. Around him, equipment that had masqueraded as industrial machinery for decades revealed its true purpose. Sensor arrays that could track ships across light years, communication systems that could coordinate operations throughout the galaxy, weapon platforms that could disable Crux environmental suits without harming the beings inside them. This facility has been operational for 37 years, Watanabe reported to Admiral Webb through quantum communication channels. We have detailed maps of every Crux installation in this sector and real-time monitoring of their fleet movements. Across the galaxy, similar revelations were occurring. The quiet human janitor who had cleaned Vorthak military headquarters for 20 years activated hidden recording devices that had captured decades of strategic planning. The modest human researcher who had worked in Zilani laboratories revealed sensor networks that had been studying their technology since its installation. The elderly human couple who had run a small restaurant near a Crux naval base began broadcasting the movement patterns of every ship that had docked there. Dr. Elena Vasquez coordinated the galaxy-wide revelation from her laboratory on Luna, watching as 50 years of preparation finally came to light. The holographic displays around her showed the locations of human assets on thousands of worlds, each one revealing capabilities that defied everything the major species thought they knew about Earth's children. Phase 2 is complete, she reported to Admiral Webb. All major species are now aware that we have been observing and preparing. Their military capabilities are compromised and their leadership is in confusion. Webb studied the tactical displays showing the positions of human forces throughout the galaxy. The revelation was proceeding exactly as planned. For 50 years, humanity had allowed themselves to be seen as primitive and harmless while building the most sophisticated intelligence and military network in galactic history. Begin Phase 3, Webb ordered. It's time for the real demonstration. In the Vorthak capital system, War Marshal Vector stood in the Imperial Command Center, his massive form trembling with rage as reports poured in from across the Empire. Human assets that had been trusted workers and advisors for decades were revealing themselves as intelligence operatives. Facilities that had been built with human assistance contained hidden systems that could monitor or disable Vorthak technology. How long have they been planning this? Vector demanded of his intelligence chief. Based on the evidence we are uncovering, at least 50 years, came the reply. Possibly since their first contact with galactic civilization, the true scope of human preparation was becoming clear. Every diplomatic mission had included intelligence operatives. Every trade agreement had been an opportunity to place assets throughout alien space. Every act of humble service had been cover for the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history. Captain Sarah Chen sat in her quarters at the Galactic Senate, watching news feeds from across the galaxy as the truth about humanity finally came to light. For 50 years, she had played the role of the polite diplomat representing a weak and primitive species. The performance had been necessary, but she was glad it was finally over. Her communication system chimed with an encrypted message from Admiral Webb. All units report successful deployment, ready for your signal to proceed to Phase 4. Sarah smiled as she prepared her response. 50 years of patience and preparation were about to pay off in ways that would reshape galactic civilization forever. Signal all units, she replied. Begin the final demonstration. It's time for the galaxy to understand that humanity's politeness was a choice, not a weakness. Across the galaxy, human forces that had been hidden for decades began revealing their true capabilities. The quiet ones were quiet no more. The New Order. The emergency session of the Galactic Senate convened in unprecedented chaos. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the crystal chamber with voices raised in panic, confusion, and barely controlled fear. The massive viewing screens displayed tactical recordings from dozens of star systems, showing the impossible moment when humanity had revealed capabilities that defied 50 years of careful observation and analysis. High Chancellor Vextar of the Vorthak Empire stood at the center of the chamber, his massive form no longer projecting the confidence that had marked his species' interactions with the galaxy for centuries. His voice, when he spoke, carried the strain of someone whose entire worldview had been shattered in a matter of hours. The humans have committed acts of war against every major power simultaneously, he declared, though his words lacked their usual authority. This coordinated deception cannot be tolerated. Matriarch Zelana of the Zelani Collective moved forward on her energy platform, her crystalline body flickering with patterns that indicated severe stress. Her normally precise analytical voice showed cracks of uncertainty. Our preliminary analysis indicates that human capabilities exceed our technological standards by at least 2 centuries, she reported. The implication suggests that everything we believed about their species was deliberately constructed deception. Elder Cruxion of the Crux Dominion opened his ancient consciousness to the discussion, his translated thoughts carrying none of their usual philosophical detachment. In 3,000 years of galactic observation, we have never encountered a species capable of such comprehensive long-term deception. The humans have played a game we did not even realize was being played. Captain Sarah Chen sat in her usual place, but everything about her demeanor had changed. Gone was the humble posture and apologetic tone that had marked 50 years of human diplomatic presentations. She sat with the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needed to pretend to be powerless. Around her, the other human delegates had undergone a similar transformation. Dr. James Mitchell reviewed data tablets with the efficiency of a military strategist, rather than a simple record keeper. Lieutenant Commander Ana Rodriguez monitored communication devices that clearly represented technology far beyond what Earth was supposed to possess. Sarah rose from her seat without waiting for recognition. The chamber fell silent, not from amusement, as had happened so many times before, but from genuine apprehension about what she might say. Honored representatives, Sarah began, her voice carrying a new authority that commanded attention. Humanity wishes to address the concerns that have been raised about our recent actions. Concerns? Vextar's voice cracked with incredulous rage. You have deceived us for 50 years while infiltrating our most secure installations. Sarah smiled, and for the first time in her diplomatic career, it was not a polite smile designed to avoid giving offense. High Chancellor, we prefer to think of it as a comprehensive cultural exchange program. We learned so much from all of you. Dr. Elena Vasquez materialized as a holographic projection in the center of the chamber, her image surrounded by data displays that showed the true extent of human knowledge about every species represented in the Senate. The information was staggering in its detail and frightening in its implications. For 50 years, humanity has observed and studied every aspect of galactic civilization, Vasquez announced. We have mapped your military capabilities, analyzed your technological weaknesses, and documented every act of aggression committed by the major powers against weaker species. The holographic displays shifted to show historical records that made many representatives uncomfortable. The Vorthak conquest of the Murdan colonies, the Zelani enslavement of the thyroid mining worlds, the Crux abandonment of 12 species during the Galactic Plague Crisis. 50 years of careful documentation had created an undeniable record of the major powers' treatment of weaker civilizations. You accuse us of deception, Sarah continued, but we have never lied to you. We simply chose not to demonstrate our full capabilities while we learned whether galactic civilization was worthy of our trust. Elder Cruxion's consciousness focused on the human delegation with new intensity. And what was your conclusion about our worthiness? Sarah's expression grew cold. You were planning to enslave our entire species yesterday. What do you think our conclusion was? A new holographic figure materialized beside Dr. Vasquez. Admiral Marcus Webb appeared in his dress uniform, his image carrying the authority of someone who commanded forces that had just revolutionized the galaxy's understanding of military power. As we speak, human fleets are positioned throughout Council space, Webb announced. We have assets monitoring every major installation, every fleet movement, and every communication that matters. We know the location of every military base, the strength of every defense, and the vulnerability of every target. The chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives protested the implications of his words. But Webb continued speaking, his voice cutting through the noise with military precision. The Vorthak 1st Assault Fleet is currently being towed to the neutral port at Kepler Station, he reported. Their crews are unharmed and will be returned to Vorthak space once their government abandons all claims on human territory. The Zelani 3rd Defense Squadron has been temporarily disabled near their home system. Their ships will be repaired and returned once they acknowledge humanity's right to exist free from interference. The Crux exploration fleets have been escorted to safe harbor. They will be released when the Crux government agrees to new protocols for interacting with developing species. Vextar rose to his full intimidating height, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of pure aggression. You dare to threaten the entire Galactic Senate? We will crush your pathetic species and scatter your atoms across space. Sarah stood to face him, her small human form dwarfed by his massive bulk but showing no fear whatsoever. High Chancellor, you seem to misunderstand our position. We are not threatening anyone. We are establishing new rules for galactic civilization. The main viewing screen shifted to show real-time images from across the galaxy. Human ships appeared in every major star system, not as conquerors but as guardians. They positioned themselves between strong and weak species, their very presence changing the balance of power that had existed for centuries. The age of the strong simply taking what they want from the weak is over, Sarah announced. Humanity has appointed itself as the guardian of galactic civilization. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves. Commander Jin Watanabe's holographic form joined the growing display of human authority. Our intelligence networks have identified 47 species currently under threat from the major powers. As of this moment, those species are under human protection. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Humanity was not just revealing hidden capabilities, they were fundamentally restructuring galactic politics by removing the prey from the predator's reach. Matriarch Zelana's crystalline form flickered with patterns of confusion and fear. You cannot simply decree a new galactic order. The natural progression of technological species requires the absorption of weaker civilizations. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her scientific background evident in her methodical response. Matriarch, our 50 years of observation have shown us that your natural progression is actually highly inefficient. The species you classify as weak often possess innovations and perspectives that could benefit everyone if they were allowed to develop freely. The holographic displays shifted to show comparative analyses that demonstrated how forced integration actually slowed technological and cultural advancement across the galaxy. The data was compelling and impossible to argue with. We propose a new model, Sarah announced. Cooperation instead of conquest, trade instead of tribute, growth instead of absorption. Elder Cruxion's ancient consciousness considered the human proposal with the weight of millennia behind his thoughts. And if the major powers refuse to accept your new model? Sarah's smile became genuinely warm for the first time in the session. Elder, that would be most unfortunate for the major powers. Admiral Webb activated a final holographic display that showed the true extent of human military preparation. Hidden shipyards that had produced fleets of advanced warships, training facilities that had prepared millions of personnel for galactic operations, research installations that had developed technologies beyond anything the Council species possessed. For 50 years we have hoped that demonstration would be unnecessary, Webb said. We preferred to solve problems through diplomacy and patient example. But we have always been prepared for the possibility that force might be required to protect innocent species. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of human preparation became clear. Every humble interaction, every apologetic diplomatic note, every acceptance of dismissive treatment had been part of a comprehensive strategy that spanned 5 decades and thousands of worlds. Captain Torres appeared as another holographic figure, her cargo ship visible in the background. "The galaxy has known us as merchants and diplomats," she said. "What the galaxy didn't realize is that every human outside the Sol system has been a soldier in disguise." The silence stretched for long minutes as representatives from dozens of species tried to process the fundamental shift in galactic power. The humans, who had been dismissed as primitive and irrelevant for 50 years, had just revealed themselves as the most advanced and well-prepared military force in the galaxy. Sarah returned to her seat, but her posture remained confident and authoritative. "The Senate will continue to function as it always has," she announced. "But from now on, humanity will have veto power over any action that threatens peaceful species. We will also be establishing monitoring stations throughout Council space to ensure compliance with new protection protocols." Vextar's voice carried desperate fury. "The major powers will never accept human dominance. We will unite against you." Sarah's response was delivered with the same polite tone she had used for 50 years, but now it carried an entirely different meaning. "High Chancellor, you are certainly welcome to try. We have been preparing for that possibility as well." The holographic displays showed human forces positioned not just defensively, but in locations that could simultaneously neutralize all major power military capabilities within hours. 50 years of patient intelligence gathering had created targeting solutions for every significant military asset in the galaxy. "We sincerely hope that will not be necessary," Admiral Webb added. "Humanity has no desire to rule the galaxy. We simply wish to ensure that civilization advances through cooperation rather than conquest." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward one final time. "The choice is yours, honored representatives. You can continue as you always have, but within the new framework that protects weaker species. Or you can test our resolve and discover that humanity's patience, while considerable, has its limits." As the session adjourned in stunned confusion, Sarah Chen remained in her seat, watching the representatives of the major powers file out with expressions ranging from fury to fear to grudging respect. 50 years of careful planning and patient preparation had led to this moment. Her communication device chimed with a message from Admiral Webb. "All units report successful positioning. The galaxy is secure." Sarah smiled as she prepared her response. The quiet ones had finally spoken, and their voice would reshape civilization itself. "Inform all units that Phase 5 is now active," she replied. "Begin establishing the new galactic protection protocols. It's time to build the civilization we always hoped this galaxy could become." The age of the strong dominating the weak was over. The age of humanity's gentle guidance was about to begin.